Great to see everybody this evening. I would say that my message is to the Church of God, and I can say to the Church of God that these are the best of times. I could also say these are very challenging times, and I will get into both here soon. But we just completed about a month ago our 103rd General Conference, which pales in comparison to the Minnesota State Conference, which is going to have 150 years next spring. So, yeah. That will be quite an occasion, I am sure. But the 103rd General Conference was held in Oregon, Illinois, the 2nd through the 4th of August. And at that time, I completed my 4th and final year on the board of directors. So as of now, I guess I'm an ex. JJ is still there. But it was a very good conference. We had, I would say, around 200. The Oregon Church holds 220, and it was full almost every evening. As a member of the board, all day Wednesday, I was in meetings, as was JJ. There were 89 delegates there. Everybody on the board gets a vote, 7, 35 ministers, and 47 churches. What we've done in the last few years is to save money, rotate amongst our bigger churches. So Oregon, Illinois is one site, Guthrie Grove is another site, Lawrenceville, Ohio is another site, and the church in Atlanta, actually McDonough is the fourth one. So we rotate between those four churches for General Conference to the churches that are of the size and capacity that they can handle it. I would say next year or the year after, we will have a fifth church that will be able to handle General Conference, and that's Kokomo, Indiana. They're in the process of building a quite large auditorium, and so they will have the wherewithal to do it as well. So we'll have 5 churches that we can rotate General Conference. We're in the best of times. We're out of debt. We have no debt. We have a lot of young ministers. Problem is we don't have enough ministers. We have a couple of our larger churches are looking for ministers and can't find one. Omaha, Nebraska and McDonough are looking for a pastor. They've been looking for a year or two. They can't find one. So we're short of ministers. It's great. We're in the best of times. We have a bevy of young ministers, but we don't have enough. I mentioned we're out of debt. I could have said we're in the best of times. And I could have said we're in the worst of times. But we're not. I would say those worst of times were 20 years ago, in the early 2000s, when we had $1.7 million of debt. We don't have that. We are debt-free. We're debt-free in large part because of a couple individuals. The Jack Herp family enabled us to buy our office building. We have a 4-story office building in Atlanta, actually McDonough. And we're able to rent out about half of the space. So we have some income from the space that's rented out. That was allowed because of the Jack Herp family, in large part. And we're out of debt primarily because of the generosity of Don and Marge Overmeyer. How many of you know Don and Marge? Yeah, several. Well, over the course of their lifetime, and I can tell you this now because it was announced at General Conference, but over the course of their lifetime, over 47 gifts, they gave the conference $1.3 million. So if you see Randy, their son, down in Phoenix, and Randy doesn't have any children, and so Don and Marge were very benevolent to the conference. So in large part, because of Don and Marge, we're debt-free. So we are debt-free, which is the best of times. The challenging times is that this past April, when we met in Oregon. Well, actually, I go back before that. April in Atlanta, we couldn't balance our budget. We were short $162,000 from balancing our budget. Wasn't very pleasant, was it? So what do? I can remember when I first started farming, those of you that might be in a small business or have your own business, it's a challenge, to fill out a cash flow or a budget that'll satisfy your banker. I can remember that when I first started farming. Oh, I can't bump the price of corn or beans or sugar up because my banker knows what that is, so I got to cut expenses. So that's what we did. We cut expenses mightily. Our tenants at our building had been paying with credit card. We stopped that because we had to pay the 3% fee. So now they can't use credit card anymore. It saved us 11 grand. And so we were able to pare that $162,000 negative down to 111. And those of you that were at conference probably saw that there was a $111,000 carry forward, I forget exactly what it was called, a carry forward to balance our budget. Because we can't present an unbalanced budget to the delegates. So we had about $200,000, just a little over, of Don and Marge's money that we had in cash cushion. We used half of that to balance our budget. So we have the other half, about $100,000 left. So I'm not on the board anymore. That's JJ's job now. But next year they're going to have the same problem unless we fix things. Fixing things is at least twofold. Tuition drives our budget. It does. And we're down on students, both at the Korean Extension, and with Church of God kids. Well, I shouldn't say that because Koreans are Church of God as well. But the Koreans are down to 29 students, and they were up as high as 75. So they're at 29. A lot of that can be traced back to Korea, and I don't understand it totally, but there was a couple church organizations in Korea that were, I guess, very corrupt, and they gave all Christian organizations a bad name. So that is affecting the Korean kids as well as their visas to get over here has been somewhat of a challenge. So I would love for the Korean Extension to grow in numbers, as well as our own students. Last year we only had 8 full-time and only 3 on campus, and we had another 8 online. So we had 16 students. This year, I understand it's going to be 17. There's going to be a few more that are going to live on campus. I think I was told 8. Last year, we had 1 girl living in a house all by herself, and 2 brothers living in another house all by themselves. That really bothered me. I don't think any of you parents would send your daughter 1,000 miles away or 1,500 miles away to live all alone in a house. So we couldn't balance the budget. We knew we had to fix it somehow. We knew we had to get numbers up. So the board had a very difficult discussion on how do we fix it. We need more students. So the board came to the agreement that we should search and explore hiring a college president. Someone who could attract students, who could promote the college. And when we got to the discussion period on Thursday afternoon, it was a fairly healthy discussion. Some thought, no, we've had a president before, we don't want a president again. We just need to hire a promoter, someone that would promote the college. My thought was a president would do that. But there was a lot of discussion. So this is a discussion for you folks to consider, because JJ will be faced with this. Do we hire a college president? What do we do? It's not the worst of times, but it's challenging. So we have to decide, where do we go moving forward? We have 2 members of our faculty that are getting up there in age. I'll be 79 in a couple of weeks, and I think David Krog's only a year behind me. And Bob Jones is, I think, in that 75 range. So we don't want to push those 2 out, especially considering we may relocate, which I will get into in a little bit. So that discussion on a college president took a lot of time during our business sessions. And the Thursday afternoon session, Dennis Sharp, who's our chairman. Dennis is a great guy. He's a great chairman. He's organized. He follows his agenda, keeps us on track. He talked about why we think the board should hire a college president. And as well as Dennis, then Mark Kane, who also went off the board with me. Mark is from Ohio, and he's a great guy. He's a techie guy, like those guys way in back controlling my mic. By the way, can you hear me? You can. My wife says I don't need a mic. I talk loud enough. So. Anyway, Mark Kane talked about the UCA. Have you heard of the UCA? The Unitarian Christian Association. I got that right? Alliance. Unitarian Christian Alliance. That group is growing like wildfire. It started out in 2019, 4 years ago, with 5 board members, of which Mark was one. And he talked about the UCA, the fact that it's not a church, it's not a challenge. And I know some of you might be concerned about the UCA. Don't be. They are great people. They're just like our friend Bob here. They're looking for others that feel the same that they do. They're looking for other Unitarians. For those of you that may not know what a Unitarian is is a person that believes that only the Father is God. A binitarian would say that Jesus and the Father are God. A trinitarian would say that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are all God. So we are Unitarians. I'd prefer Onitarian, but that doesn't seem to fly. So I'm a Onitarian. But anyway, he talked about that group. 4 years ago, they had 5 members. Today, they're almost 1,300. So they're growing. People are looking for Unitarians. Bob mentioned that Unitarians are hard to find. And I think that's true, but it's changing. I think it's changing. We have the Unitarian movement, and they're an impressive group. Many PhDs, PharmDs, they're looking. We have actually, I talked to Jeff a little bit earlier, we actually have a few that are showing up in Church of God churches, Unitarians that are part of the Unitarian movement, the Unitarian Christian Alliance. So don't be afraid of them. They're good people. So we're in challenging times. I'm curious, when I was growing up, I thought we had like 8,000 or 10,000 people. How many people do you think we have in our organization? Don't count Africa or Haiti, just mainland U.S., Alaska, Hawaii. How many do you think we have? Church of God members. 6,500. How many? 6,500. Who said that? Daryl. Well, he's a little older, so he would have a higher number. Anybody else want to guess? I thought we had like 8,000 to 10,000 years ago when I was growing up. Guess what? We don't. In the early 80s, 40 years ago, we had 4,100 members. Do you know what it is now? 2,400. Folks, we're going the wrong direction. I hate to say we're dying, but we're going the wrong direction. So we need to fix some things, or we're not going to have enough kids to go to the college. We're already short. We have 2 large churches looking for ministers and about 15 churches like my church in Litchfield that would like to find a part-time part-time minister. There's none there. So we have to fix our problem, both to supply our churches and to fix our problem with our budget at the college. If we can get our numbers up, then that'll fix our budget. There are other reasons which I'll get into in a bit. What would we do without these things? So Dennis talked the first day about the president concept, and Mark talked about the UCA. The next day, Dennis talked about what have we accomplished in the last year? What does the Church of God General Conference have to offer? And I don't know what you think it has to offer, but it's the organization that provides our ministers, and we maybe should be doing more to help some of our churches that are struggling. We have a lot of churches that are struggling. When we were contemplating moving, a couple of years ago already, we contacted every church, every one of our 70-some churches. And they were so preoccupied with their challenges at home. Well, whatever you folks think is good with me. And so a lot of our churches, I would say half our churches are struggling with numbers, some with finances. And so our thought is that if we would hire a college president, that would free Seth up to help our churches that are looking for help. So that's another part of this president search and looking into if that's something that would help. And it may not happen. I don't know if the new board, if that's something that they're going to feel they should pursue. That's up to them. But they have challenges, and it relates right back to our budget. Can we affect our budget? So I mentioned we have used up half of Marge's surplus that she gave us this year. If we have the same problem next year, we use the rest of it up. Then I'm not sure what we do. We have scholarship money. We have a lot of other money that's restricted. We have a fair amount of cash invested, but the vast majority of it is restricted. We can't use it. We have a foundation, if you remember 30-some years ago, an effort was underway to raise $1 million. They succeeded. They raised $1,059,000. And that money has been retained. That original principal amount has been retained and not been touched, and it's grown. But about 10 years ago, they devised a formula where that could grow depending on what the CPI was. So that number has grown. That's more of a challenge to touch it. So we rely on you folks to keep the conference going. Even though we're debt-free, it doesn't solve the problem in its entirety. So, what have we accomplished? We now have a pastor sabbatical program that if your pastor needs a break, and I know some of you may think that, those pastors, they got the easiest job in the world. Well, they don't, and sometimes they need a break. So we've started a pastoral sabbatical program where they can take up to 1 to 3 months off, and the break is negotiated with the conference, the length of the break with the conference and with MALT, which is the Ministerial Association Leadership Team. They are going to oversee the pastoral sabbatical program. There is only allowed 2 a year, and the conference will reimburse the church because the pastor will still get paid. We will reimburse the church $150 a week for however long they're on their program. So I think, and while they're on their sabbatical, they must be in constant contact with the pastor's pastor, which is a good thing. So I think that's going to be a popular program with pastors. We also have just established a circuit preacher program, which may be beneficial to those churches that don't have a pastor. That already we have 12 committed, 12 ministers, and I would guess a lot of them are retired, but I don't know for sure, that have agreed to enter into this pastor circuit preacher program. Another one that I don't know how many of you young adults knew about, but there was a young adult getaway in St. Louis this summer. This was another idea of our chairman, Dennis Sharps. He originally wanted to call it 40 under 40. Well, that phrase has kind of fallen away. Now they just call it a young adult getaway. 45 young adults in their 20s and 30s got together. I think last year they had 65. So those of you in that age range, consider it for next year. I'm not sure where it will be, but those heading it up are Talon Paul, Kyle McLean, and Josiah Kane. Maybe you know them. So that's another thing that's very popular. Another one of Dennis Sharp's ideas is called the Ministry Outreach League, MOL, the Ministry Outreach League. That league provides financial help to churches. It can be a one-time payment. I know one church recently got a one-time $10,000 for audio and computer equipment. Or it can be so much a month. Most of them are so much a month, 100 a month, up to 400 a month, I believe. And the board approves it if it works. And we just had an appeal, I believe, didn't we, for the Ministry Outreach League. That's where that money goes. And it's fairly healthy. I think we have $80-some thousand in that program. And the board watches it pretty close to make sure we have money going forward. Churches that have gotten benefit from the Ministry Outreach League are Payson, Arizona, which is a new church. It's an offshoot of the Tempe, Arizona church. The former minister there, Steve Taylor, started a church in Payson, Arizona, Truth Point. They're getting Ministry Outreach League money to help them out. Garden Park, Michigan, got a one-time payment. Maple Grove, that's the church in Kokomo, Indiana. They got a $2,000 grant for a certain foster need program. Tree of Life in Piedmont, South Carolina, they got Ministry Outreach League money for a short term. They're now self-sufficient. They say they don't need it anymore. So it's a way to get new churches off the ground. And then another church is Rock Solid, Michigan. These are probably churches you haven't heard about, but they're Church of God's, they're young churches of God, and we try to keep them going and provide as much help as we can. As I said, Mark Kane and I went off the board. We had 4 candidates vying for the 2 positions. They were Rob Lanning, who was a farmer from Ripley, Illinois, Shane Martin, a young man from the Kokomo, Indiana church, Lynette Lobel, some of you may know Tab and Lynette from Louisiana, and Joe Myers from Phoenix. The 2 that were elected were Shane Martin, who's a sharp young man from Kokomo. He was elected, and Joe Myers was elected to his 3rd term. And so they're the 2 new board members replacing Mark Kane and I. I should mention the mornings of General Conference were filled with classes. There was probably 20 different classes. Susan and I went to Mark Kane's class on the UCA, and then there was another gal there, and I haven't heard of her, Elaine Roselle. Anybody know her? You do. Elaine Roselle. She spoke on wokeness. Oh my goodness, was that good. I'll tell you what it technically was. The light at the end of the postmodern tunnel, responses to wokeness, critical theory, cancel culture, identity politics, and toxic masculinity and more. I think that'd be a gal to bring up here and talk about that. She was good. I mean, it was an hour-long class, and it was over in no time, and I don't know if she covered all of her subjects. But so there were a lot of really good classes. Susan and I only went to 2, and very good classes. But then, as I said, the afternoon session was business. We had reports, committee reports. Denise Denise Kramer is I think she should be VP of Finance. She does a great job. Whatever questions I asked her as treasurer, she either answered me or she said, I'll get right back to you. And she did. So she gave a report, and she's also part of the reason we're debt-free. But Denise gave the finance report. Michael Sisler, who you all know, he was here last summer. He gave the college report. Bobby Partain from Guthrie Grove talked about North American Home Missions. And LHI, which is a popular organization and seems to be able to, if they get out a call for money, the people respond to LHI. Joe Martin talked about what's going on there, and Joe has wanted out for a while. He's getting up in age, so Ann Osborne is going to take over for Joe Martin with LHI. And as I mentioned before, our physical numbers, would you believe we have 500 churches in Africa? I told that to a minister when I first got on the board. Oh, no, we can't have that many churches. We do. We have around 500 in Mozambique, Malawi, Kenya. Not sure if that includes Haiti. But these people are hungry. They're just hungry for the Lord. When you hear that we have a lot of churches overseas, we do. One thing I should mention is that, have you heard of Cyclone Henry, was it? Over in Africa? Just demolished some of our churches. I think 20 churches were leveled. They're gone. And so I've told the folks at Litchfield, we should help out one of those churches. It only costs $2,000 to $3,000 to build a church. Can you believe it? $2,000 to $3,000 to build a church over in Africa. And so I'm going to encourage the Litchfield Church to build a church for one of those churches. Just something for you to consider. There's always somebody that's worse off than us, and there certainly is. Let's see, where am I at? Relocation. You've heard this word before, haven't you? There seems to be some dissatisfaction with the Atlanta area. Probably at least twofold. It's too far from the core of our churches. People don't want to send their kids way down there. They'd rather the churches be up. The general conference should be up by where our churches are. So I'm not on the board anymore. I won't be making that decision, but I would be surprised if we don't move in the next 2 to 3 years. I would say in 3 years we will be looking at relocating. The question is where. And the other reason for a little bit of dissatisfaction with Atlanta's changing. It's really not the safe community that it once was. So it's a combination of it's out of our area and it's not as safe as it once was. So I'm thinking that we will relocate. The question is where? Where will we relocate? Well, up by our churches, obviously. I can tell you that the Maple Grove Church in Kokomo, Indiana, the one I mentioned before that has that one of their members is on the board, they've offered to give the conference 5 acres to relocate to. They have approximately 7 where the church is, and they want to give us 5. I don't know what will happen. That's up to JJ, whether we take them up on their offer or just what. I was very appreciative of it and told them so, that what a nice gesture that is. It's a bit elongated. I would feel better if it was more square, but beggars can't be choosers, I guess. So I don't know where we'll relocate to, but don't be surprised if you hear that the General Conference is going to relocate. The question is where. I talked about the college president and why we think that we need somebody to lead our college. And of course, if we relocate, I can tell you that David Krogh and Bob Jones, they won't move at their age. So we would be looking at changes should we move. But in 3 years, David's going to be over 80 and Bob's going to be close to it. So change happens. It's a part of life. So I told you about our membership loss. We're down to 2,400 members in 40 years. So we've lost how many every decade? In 4 decades, we've lost 1,700 members. So we need to do something different. We need to fix this, both for the conference and for our churches. As I said, we're in the best of time. We're in the best shape we've ever been in. We're in the best possible time, money-wise, to relocate. So we're in great shape. We really are. Oh, I know one other thing I didn't mention. As I mentioned, we couldn't balance our budget. We used some of our surplus money to balance our budget. Twofold. The reason is twofold. Number one, our tuition is way down. And we have scholarship money for you young kids that want to go to school. If you're a Church of God member, it's only going to cost you half. I believe I have this right. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's only going to half. The other half will be paid with scholarship. If you're a Church of God minister's child, it's free. You can get your education free. We have the scholarship money to use. But if we don't have students, we don't use the scholarship money. The other problem is, I know when you do your own personal cash flows, it's never a problem the expenses are too great. It's always just not enough income. Well, that's part of our problem. We have 70-some churches, close to 80. 38% of them do not give to the conference. Now, why? Does your church give to the conference? I don't know why, but 38% do not give to the conference. And I know that the Litchfield Church at one time didn't. The reason being, I've had it, those people mismanage money. I'm not going to give money to that organization. Well, I can tell you that that's changed. That's not the case anymore. So you can feel comfortable giving money to the conference, that it would be used wisely. I can remember when I first got on the board, we have a pro forma spreadsheet that we get that shows where all the money is. And they call it a balance sheet, and I have a problem with that. It's really not a balance sheet. Now we have a real balance sheet. But we were borrowing money from funds that I didn't know existed. Internally, we were borrowing. It took me a month to figure that thing out. Where if the money was free or if it was obligated. So what a pleasure. Right, Ann? What a pleasure to look at a clean, what they call balance sheet. But you don't have to be concerned that your money is going to be frivolously spent anymore. I can assure you, I watched that money pretty close for 4 years. So we need to get more churches giving to the conference. And if not, in 3-4 years, even though we're debt-free, the conference is going to be scrambling. So we need to fix that problem. We need to fix the tuition problem. We need to fix the giving problem. So, what do we do? How do we fix this problem? I don't know. Maybe some churches should merge so we can offer programs. Small churches, 15, 20 people, it's hard to offer the comprehensive number of programs that'll attract families. I think we need to analyze our situation. I tend to always drift forward towards the business side. And perhaps we need to look at what a business would do. Have you heard of SWOT? S-W-O-T? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What are our strengths? Analyze your church. What are our strengths? What are your strengths? I know Bob this morning. You folks that missed Bob this morning, it was your loss. It was a great time. He called our message magnificent. I think that's what you said. We have a magnificent message. And I think the times that we're in, people are wondering what's going on, what's going to happen. A lot of you folks have an idea. Tell them. Advertise your church. I'm just as guilty as anybody. We should put an ad in the paper. Come to our church. What about this? What about that? What about our weaknesses? What are the weaknesses of your church? If you have a weakness, fix it. When I first got on the board, I don't know who it was told me, we're kind of tribal. Everybody's related. Now, maybe that's a strength. I don't know. It could be a strength. I see some smiles. But it could be a weakness if visitors come to church and all you do is talk to your family. So if you do that, talk to the visitors. And I know some people that don't. And that's not the way a church grows. I don't hear a lot of other weaknesses. I know Bob used a great one in regard to his Oneness Pentecostal group. Toxic legalism. That's a scary term. But if you want to kill your church, embrace toxic legalism. I know from experience. So, we have strengths. We have weaknesses. What about opportunities? Are there any opportunities at all out there? What are the opportunities? The day and age we're living in itself is an opportunity because I think people are not scared, but they're concerned. What's going on? What's going on in our crazy world? So our opportunities are endless, and I don't think we're taking advantage of our opportunities. I'm talking about all your individual churches. All right, we've got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. What are the threats to your church? Maybe they're internal, I don't know. But I'm telling you to analyze your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, and take advantage of them. Fix them. If you have them, fix them. That's what we're trying to do at the General Conference. I think that we fixed a few, we have more to fix. But you can be proud of your General Conference. You really can. It's come a long ways since those days 20 years ago. So, what's your plan? My message was to the Church of God. My question is, what's your plan? Do you have a 3 to 5 year plan? If you don't, you should. I know at Johnson Farms, we have a 3 to 5 year plan. And we ask ourselves 3 questions. Where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years? Second question is, what do we have to do to be where we want to be in 3 to 5 years? And the third question is, what do we have to do to overcome what's going to prevent us from being where we want to be in 3 to 5 years? So, my message to the Church of God is we're in great shape, but we have challenging times ahead. And with that, does anybody have a question from an ex-board member? I'll answer it if I can. I don't hear any, Jeff.
You answered it right.
Thank you. Yes, one.
Find a president from among our COG members. How do you find a president? How are you?
Oh, how are we going to find a president? Beating the bushes. It's gonna be a challenge. I honestly, I don't know if it'll work, if we'll find the right person. I know that there are some that say, oh, you can't get anybody from the UCA movement. Oh, no, no, no. Well, I would say, why not? Oh, they might believe different than we do. Well, I think what we need to do is we have to decide, what are the non-negotiables? What is non-negotiable to you? Huh? Ah, doctrine. How much doctrine? Huh? I can't hear her.
The last church of God formed on, kingdom of God, the millennium. The one God, human Messiah, Jesus, that he didn't pre-exist.
I didn't hear everything she said. You'll have to repeat it.
Just a general Church of God doctrine. Just the
Church of God doctrine. Well, yeah. So I can tell you, does everybody here agree on everything? No. So what are the non-negotiables? I mean, oh my, he believes in pre-trib rapture. Oh my, he believes in post-trib second coming of Christ. Oh my, he believes in non-personality of Satan. We have to decide what's non-negotiable.
What's not the Bible?
Yeah. I don't know, did I answer your question, Miriam?
But I think maybe we should go with Bob and his group of people. Maybe we find somebody.
Okay. That'd be great. You tell JJ. He's the guy to talk to anymore. I don't have any legs on the board. I don't know if I answered your question, Miriam, but it's going to be a challenge. So pray for it. Pray about it. It's all yours, Jeff.